The Snow Queen, a tale in 7 stories. 6th story, The Lap Woman and the Fin Woman. They stopped in front of the little hut, and a makeshift dwelling it was. The roof of it almost touched the ground, and the doorway was so low that the family had to lie on their stomachs to crawl in or out of it. No one was at home except an old lapped woman cooking fish over a well-oiled lamp. The reindeer told her Zelda's whole story. But first he told his own, which he thought was much more important. Besides, Zelda was so cold that she couldn't say a thing. "Oh, you poor creatures," the lap woman said. "You still have a long way to go. Why, you will have to travel hundreds of miles into the Finnmark, for it's there that the Snow Queen is taking a country vacation and burning her blue fireworks every evening. I'll jot down a message on a dried codfish, for I haven't any paper. I want you to take it to the Finn woman who lives up there. She will be able to tell you more about it than I can." As soon as Zelda had thawed out and had had something to eat and drink, the lap woman wrote a few words on a dried codfish, told Zelda to take good care of it, and tied her again on the back of the reindeer. Off he ran, and all night long the skies crackled and screeched as the most beautiful northern lights flashed over their heads. At last they came to the Finnmark and knocked at the Finn woman's chimney, for she hadn't a sight of the door. It was so hot inside that the Finn woman went about almost naked. She was small and terribly dowdy, but she at once helped little Zelda off with her mittens and boots and loosened her clothes. Otherwise, the heat could have wilted her. Then the woman put a piece of ice on the reindeer's head and read what was written on the codfish. She read it 3 times, and when she knew it by heart, she put it into the kettle of soup, for they might as well eat it. She never wasted anything. The reindeer told her his own story first, and then little Zelda's. The Finn woman winked a knowing eye, but she didn't say anything. "You are such a wise woman," said the reindeer. "I know that you can tie all the winds of the world together with a bit of cotton thread. If the sailor unties one knot, he gets a favorable wind. If he unties another, he gets a stiff gale. While if he unties the 3rd and 4th knots, such a tempest rages that it flattens the trees in the forest. Won't you give this little girl something to drink to make her as strong as 12 men, so that she may overpower the Snow Queen?" 12 strong men, the Finn woman sniffed. Much good that could be. She went to the shelf, took down a big rolled-up skin, and unrolled it. On this skin, strange characters were written, and the Finn woman read them until the sweat rolled down her forehead. The reindeer again begged her to help Zelda, and little Zelda looked at her with such tearful, imploring eyes that the woman began winking again. She took the reindeer aside in a corner, and while she was putting another piece of ice on his head, she whispered to him, "Little Kay is indeed with the Nose Queen, and everything suits him fine. He thinks it is the best place in all the world, but that's because he has a splinter of glass in his heart and a small piece of it in his eye. He will never be human again unless this can be gotten out, and the Snow Queen will hold him in her power." "But can't you give little Zelda something to drink to give her more power than all those things? No power that I could give could be as great as which she already has. Don't you see how men and beasts are compelled to serve her, and how far she has come into the wide world since she started out in her naked feet? We mustn't tell her about this power. Strength lies in her heart because she is such a sweet, innocent child. If she herself cannot reach the Snow Queen and rid little Kay of those pieces of glass, then there's no help that we can give her. The Snow Queen's garden lies about 8 miles from here. You may carry the little girl there and put her down by the big birch covered with red berries that grows on the snow. Then don't just stand there gossiping, but hurry to get back here. The Finn woman lifted little Judah onto the reindeer, and he galloped away as fast as he could. "Oh," cried Judah, "I forgot my boots and mittens." She soon felt the need in that knife-like cold, but the reindeer did not dare to stop. He galloped on until they came to the big bush covered with the red berries. Here he set Judah down and kissed her on the mouth, while big shining tears ran down his face. Then he ran back as fast as he could. Little Judah stood there without boots and mittens, right in the middle of icy Finnmark. She ran as fast as ever she could. A whole regiment of snowflakes swirled toward her, but they did not fall from the sky, for there was not a cloud up there, and the northern lights were ablaze. The flakes skirmished along the ground, and the nearer they came, the larger they grew. Judah remembered how large and strange they had appeared when she looked at them under the magnifying glass. But here they were much more monstrous and terrifying. They were alive. They were the Snow Queen's advance guard, and their shapes were most strange. Some looked like ugly, overgrown porcupines. Some were like a knot or snakes stuck out their heads in every direction, and others were like fat little bears with every hair a bristle. All of them were glistening white, for all were lively snowflakes. It was so cold that, as little Judah said the Lord's Prayer, she could see her breath freezing in front of her mouth. Like a cloud of smoke, it grew thicker and thicker, and took a shape of little angels that grew bigger and bigger the moment they touched the ground. All of them had helmets on their heads, and they carried shields and lances in their hands. Rank upon rank, they increased, and when Judah had finished her prayer, she was surrounded by a legion of angels. They struck the dread snowflakes with their lances and shivered them into 1,000 pieces. Little Judah walked on, unmolested and cheerful. The angels rubbed her hands and feet to make them warmer, and she trotted sprinkly along to the Snow Queen Palace. But now, let us see how little Kay was getting on. Little Judah was furious from his mind, and he hadn't the slightest idea that she was just outside the palace. 7th story. What happened in the Snow Queen's palace and what came of it? The walls of the palace were driven snow. The windows and doors were the knife-edged wind. There were more than 100 horns shaped as the snow had drifted, and the largest of these extended for many a mile. All were lighted by the flare of the northern lights. All of the halls were so immense and so empty, so brilliant and so glacial. There was never a touch of gaiety in them, never so much as a little dance for the polar bears, at which the storm blast could have served for music, and the polar bears could have waddled about on their hind legs to show off their best manners. There was never a little party with such games as blind bear's buff or hide the paw, kerchief for the cups, nor even a little afternoon coffee over, which the white fox vixens could gossip. Empty, vast, and frigid were the snow queen halls. The northern lights flared with such regularity that you could time exactly when they could be at the highest and lowest. In the middle of the vast, empty hall of snow was a frozen lake. It was cracked into 1,000 pieces, but each piece was shaped so precisely like the others that it seemed a work of a wonderful craftsmanship. The Snow Queen sat in the exact center of it when she was at home, and she spoke of this as sitting on her mirror of reason. She said this mirror was the only one of its kind and the best thing in the world. Little Kay was blue, yes, almost black with the cold, but he did not feel it because the Snow Queen had kissed away his icy tremblings, and his heart had almost turned into ice. He was shifting some sharp, flat pieces of ice to and fro, trying to fit them into every possible pattern, for he wanted to make something with them. It was like the Chinese puzzle game we played at home, juggling little flat pieces of wood into special designs. Kay was cleverly arranging his pieces in the game of ice-cold reason. To him, the patterns were highly remarkable and of the utmost importance, for the chip of glass in his eye made him see them that way. He arranged his pieces to spell out many words, but he could never find a way to make the one word he was so eager to form. The word was eternity. The Snow Queen had said to him, "If you can puzzle that out, you shall be your own master, and I'll give you the whole world and a new pair of skates." But he could not puzzle it out. "Now I am going to make a flying trip to the warm countries," the Snow Queen told him. "I want to go and take a look into the black cauldrons." She meant the volcanoes of Etna and Vesuvius. "I must whiten them up a bit. They need it, and it will be such a relief after all those yellow lemons and purple grapes." And away she flew. Kay sat alone in the endless, empty, frigid hall and puzzled over the pieces of ice until he almost cracked his skull. He sat so stiff and still that one might have thought he was frozen to death. All of a sudden, little Zelda walked up to the palace through the great gate, which was surrounded by knife-edged wind. But Zelda said her evening prayer. The wind was lulled to rest, and the little girl came on into the vast, cold, empty hall. Then she saw Kay. She recognized him at once and ran to throw her arms around him. She held him close and cried, "Kay, dearest little Kay, I found you at last." But he sat still, stiff and cold. Zelda shed hot tears, and when they fell upon him, they went straight to his heart. They melted the lump of ice and burned away the splinter of glass in it. He looked up at her, and she sang, "Where the rose blooms so sweetly in the vale, there shall you find a Christ child without fail." Kay burst into tears. He cried so freely that the little piece of glass in his eye was washed right out. Zelda, he knew her and cried out in his happiness, "My sweet little Zelda, where have you been so long, and where have I been?" He looked around him and said, "How good it is here, how enormous and empty." He held fast to Zelda, who laughed until happy tears rolled down her cheeks. Their bliss was so heavenly that even the bits of glass danced about them and shared in their happiness when the pieces grew tired. They dropped into a pattern which made the very word that the Snow Queen had told Kay he must find before he became his own master and received the whole world and a new pair of skates. Zelda kissed his cheeks and they turned pink again. She kissed his eyes and they sparkled like hers. He kissed his hands and feet and he became strong and well. The Snow Queen might come home now whenever she pleased, for there stood the order for Kay's release written in letters of shining ice. Hand in hand, Kay and Zelda strolled out of the enormous palace. They talked about grandmother and about the roses of their roof. Wherever they went, the wind died down and the sun shone out. The reindeer was waiting to meet them when they came to the bush covered with red berries. He had brought along a young reindeer maid who had warm milk for the children to drink and who kissed them on the mouth. Then this reindeer first carried Zelda and Kay to the Finn woman. They warmed themselves in her hot room, and when she was given them directions for their journey home, they rode on to the Lap woman. She had made them new clothes and was ready to take them along in her sleigh. Side by side, the reindeer ran with them to the limits of the North Country, where the first green buds were to be seen. Here they said goodbye to the two reindeer and to the Lap woman. "Farewell," they all said. Now the first little birds began to chirp, and there were green buds all around them in the forest. Through the woods came riding a young girl on a magnificent horse that Zelda recognized, for it had once been harnessed to the golden carriage. The girl wore a bright red cap on her head and a pair of pistols in her belt. She was the little robber girl who had grown tired of staying at home and who was setting out on a journey to the North Country. If she didn't like it there, why, the world was wide and there were many other places she could go. She recognized Zelda at once and Zelda knew her too. It was a happy meeting. "You are fine for guiding about," she told little Kay. "I'd just like to know whether you deserve to have someone running to the end of the earth for your sake." But Zelda patted her cheek and asked about the prince and the princess. "They are traveling in foreign lands," the girl told her. "And the crow?" "Oh, the crow is dead," she answered. "His tame lady love is now a widow, and she wears a bit of black wool wrapped around her leg. She takes great pity on herself, but that's all stuff and nonsense. Now tell me what happened to you and how you caught up with Kay." Zelda and Kay told her the story. "Snip, snap, snurr, bustler," said the robber girl. "So everything came out all right. She shook them by the hand and promised that if ever she passed through their town, she would come to see them. And then she rode away. Kay and Judah held each other by the hand, and as they walked along, they had beautiful spring weather. The land was green and strewn with flowers. Church bells rang, and they saw the high steeples of a big town. It was the one where they used to live. They walked straight to grandmother's house, and up the stairs, and into the room where everything was just as it was when they left it. And the clock said tick-tock, and its hands were telling the time. But the moment they came in the door, they noticed one change. They were grown up now. The roses on the roof looked in at the open window, and the two little stones were still out there. Kay and Judah sat on them and held each other by the hand. Both of them had forgotten the icy, empty splendor of the Snow Queen's palace as completely as if it were some bad dream. Grandmother sat in God's good sunshine, reading to them from her Bible. Except you become as little children, you shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Kay and Judah looked into each other's eyes, and at last they understood the meaning of their old hymn. Where roses bloom so sweetly in the vale, there shall you find a Christ child without fault. And they sat there, grown up, but children still, children at heart, and it was summer, warm, glorious summer.